Okay, so this is just it's about a 9-minute video, real time, of me adding water to a base painting, underpainting, using the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer watercolour pencils on Pastelmat board. This is my usual technique. It's something that I sort of developed myself and now teach. And I see a lot of people now using this method as well. People ask, why do I use this as opposed to just using plain watercolour pencils? The simple answer, plain watercolours. The simple answer being that if I try to put watercolours down, I usually end up in a muddy mess. Using the watercolour pencils, it means that I can actually just place the colours, the pigment in exactly the right area that I want it to be in. If I use paints, I would probably be too impatient. I would rush ahead, all the colours would mix into one, and like I say, it would just end up in a muddy mess. So this is working on rather a large portrait. This one is approximately 70 by 100 centimetres, so a metre wide, working on the sand coloured Pastelmat board. So what I've done is created the eyes first of all using just dry pencil. I used a mix of Caran d'Ache Pablos and some polychromos there, and then I built up, colour blocked in all of the foundation colours for this dog. The dog is black, but in the light she throws up lots of reds, deep reds, some indigos, and also lots of warm grey on the surface. But what we do with this underpainting is we take away all of the texture that we can see, and all we're trying to do is create all of those undertones, the beautiful colours that create the rich undertones underneath all of that fur texture. So this is just the first layer or couple of layers of pencil, and the pencils, the difference between these pencils and say the polychromos is simply the binder that holds the pigment together. In the polychromo pencils, you will find that the pigment is bound together with oil. With the pencils like Prismacolors and Caran d'Ache Pablos, the binder is wax. Now these Albrecht Durer watercolour pencils, the binder is again wax, but it's a water-soluble wax, which means that once you have the pigment down, then it's simply a case of adding water to dissolve that wax. People say to me, I did get asked a question this week when someone saw this video saying, why am I putting the water on in the direction of the fur? It's not so much in the direction of the fur, I'm actually putting on in the direction of the colours I've put down. So if I put a light area down, like here across the top, it's there's like layers going down across the body of indigo, molten violet, black, and warm grey. If I went from side to side, I would lose the placement of that pigment that I put in there. All that work I've done to carefully place that pigment, I would just sweep it from side to side and it would all blend into one colour. I say to people when I teach them, your surface, your support is pretty much your palette, your mixing palette. So if you were using traditional watercolours, you would mix your colours on a palette. With the pencils, you place the pigment down onto your support and then you layer it. So if you wanted a dark indigo, you just put down the raw dark indigo. If that dark indigo also had some tinges of Prussian blue, some cool or some warm grey in there, you'd layer 3-4 colours together, and then when you add the water, those colours all blend and mix to create that warmish, lighter, bluey colour with dark indigo undertones. So normally when I do this, I use a Japanese water brush, but just simply for the size of this piece, I've decided to use a great big chunky bristle brush, just for the simple fact that I can get more water onto the brush, because all we're doing when we add water is dissolving that wax binder. Pigment's in place, we don't want to move it around. We want it to stay exactly where we've placed it, otherwise what was the point in me spending 2 days putting all those colours and tones and contrasts down, if then I'm going to sweep it and lose it all and mix it all together. So literally you're adding enough water to dissolve the wax, and not only are you dissolving the wax, you're basically activating the pigment, and that's when you get this beautiful vibrant colours coming through, and also the dark undertones. So I'll say here I'm just taking a little bit more care, so I don't want to blend one leg into the other. There's a beautiful dark shadow that I took time to place down behind that front paw. And also I don't go right up to the edge when I'm placing the water, because it does create like a tide line. So then when I go in, on top of this wet layer, once it's dry, I will add up to 25 layers, light layers of dry pigment. And first of all, I'll deepen the contrast if I need to. I'll colour block in anywhere that's lost some of its intensity, and then build and build the layers, refining with each layer that you do, and then the texture gets added in literally in the last 2 or 3 layers of an area. So with this, I've used, in the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer range, obviously I've used black, Morton violet, Caput Mortem, warm grey, a cool grey, white, and I've also put in, I've used one Museum Aquarelle as well in a muddy grey colour. I'll need to check which one that is. So that's it now, that's the dog pretty much wet all over. I just need to go up now, and I will grab my little water brush next to go in and just release the pigment in the nose. I didn't do that all in one go because I didn't want it to blur and blend out into the fur surrounding it, so I have sort of just taken a little bit of care not to do that all in one go. But basically, yeah, just using the pencils gives you control, and it's a very clean way of working, very precise way of working. You can be as detailed as you like with this underpainting. So the more work you put in now, the less work you need to put in later on with the layers. You lose all of your initial guidelines here as well, so all the initial line drawing and everything I put in all vanishes now. So you need to ensure that that colour blocking is pretty precise, otherwise you sort of starting from scratch when you start with your dry layers. But I've got enough placement here in the right places as well to ensure that I will be able to get those dry layers in the right place. So there she is, little Maisie, big Maisie, all wet. She'll dry overnight now, waiting for her dry layers to be added. Thank you.